It's a historic weekend here in St. Louis because
we have Keith Costas from Toronto.
Because it's never happened before. It's Cubs Cards here in St. Louis. It's a historic weekend, and where is our next guest, who is a St. Louisan, going to be this weekend? Good morning, Keith Costas.
Good morning, McGraw. I fled the country. I'm in Toronto.
You were so excited you couldn't stay in the country.
Couldn't contain my excitement.
So you're watching the Blue Jays-Astros series.
Blue Jays-Rangers.
Blue Jays
Astros
Rangers
are with Kansas City.
Right, yeah. In which the Blue Jays and David Price lost last night. That was kind of a shocker.
It was. He's now 6 losses in the postseason, so who knows? Crazy things happen in October. He actually kept them in the game. I thought they still had a chance to win deep in the game, but yeah, gave up a 5 spot, and the Blue Jays are down 0-1.
Yeah, there's another game today early, right?
Correct. It's an early start. It's 12:45 local, so 11:45 your time. Nice reward the Blue Jays get for breaking the longest streak in longest postseason streak in the 4 major sports. 2 weekday afternoon starts. So yeah, nice season. Here you go. Started 12:45 on a weekday.
Is there a conversation in the hallowed halls of Major League Baseball Network about these start times? And I get they're sort of have issues because there are so many games and they don't want to play the games at the same time. But if you're a 13-year-old kid living in New York, that game tonight starts at 9:45.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about the schedule. There always is. I mean, even the regular season schedule, there's a lot of scrutiny about how it's constructed. But it's a tough job, and you can't really win either way.
Major League Baseball.
Yep, that late casual fan, but yeah, that start time, if they'd gone a little bit earlier, people would have been complaining about those shadows in Dodger Stadium. You start up a little bit later and the game ends after midnight. You can't really win. Personally, if I'm the Mets, I want those later starts so you don't see Kershaw and Greinke with it's already hard enough facing those two, but with the shadows mixed in, it's almost an impossible task. So maybe a good break for the Mets. Not such a great break.
All right, fair enough. Let's talk Cubs Cards. They've played 19 times. The Cardinals have won 11 times. And in those 19 games, hits batsman number 17. This is going to be, these two teams do not like each other.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And you think maybe it's postseason, that stuff will go on the back burner. We saw that wasn't the case last night or 2 nights ago rather, with the benches clearing in Pittsburgh. So yeah, it should be a pretty heated series. Obviously, Joe Madden said plenty of things throughout the course of the regular season. Most people think just to get his team fired up, playing a little bit of mind games, but the rivalry is certainly back and more heated than we've seen in years past. So could be interesting. Maybe some good side antics as well.
Has John Lester been able to throw over to first base any better the second half of the season?
He's gotten better, but it's still on the whole not such a great situation for them. Obviously, the Cardinals aren't. You can confuse this with Whitey ball, but if you can pick your spots against Lester, there's still stolen bases to be had. He gave up, I think, somewhere in the mid-30s in terms of stolen bases, which was far and away the most in the major leagues. So it's kind of shocking that something like that for such a great pitcher went so unnoticed for so long. It almost felt like once it started to get some play in the media, the team started to catch on, which sounds crazy, I know. These teams obviously know much more than the casual fan, but it just seemed to snowball on him after it got so much attention last October.
Keith Costas with us live from Toronto. How is Uber in Toronto?
Haven't experienced it yet, but I did use public transportation. Nice little train system up here, so they're with it in the 21st century here north of the border.
All right. Hopefully at some point they'll send you to St. Louis and you can take our new Uber service before they shut it down again through the courts.
That's the plan. I'll be there for the World Series, hopefully.
All right, good. Keith, be safe. Have a good time, and we'll check in with you later. You got it. Keith Costas here with MLB TV, and of course, they sent him to Toronto for that American League Series. But it's Cubs Cards here, and
that's right.
He's right, though. Nobody really, when John Lester was that star pitcher, that star free agent this summer, nobody talked about how he couldn't throw to first base. And then the first game of the year, that Sunday night game where it was John Lester versus Adam Wainwright on ESPN, right out of the gates, the first game of the year, they talked about how, hey, John Lester hasn't thrown over to first base in a year and a half. And it was like, what? And after that, then it seemed to snowball. It was he was suffering privately.
So, suffering privately. It's just, what is it, like a mental block? Or just
exactly
the
what it
inability
is.
To...
It's a mental block. He just cannot throw over to first base. It was like, remember Rick Ankiel with the Cardinals? He was a pitcher, started game 1 of the playoffs against the Braves, I believe it was, and he was throwing it to the backstop. He was throwing it into the stands.
Really?
Yeah. But so after a long struggle, he finally quit, and they put him in the outfield, and he would throw a strike from center field to home plate. Like throw a guy out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, there's been all sorts of stories where people can't. There was a catcher, Mackie Sasser, who couldn't throw the ball back to the pitcher. He could throw it to second base,
but not to the pitcher.
he could throw it to second base and get the guy stealing, but he couldn't throw it back to the pitcher.
Really? There's a lot of superstition.
Well, it was a tick.
Right?
It was a mental tick. It was a mental.
It'll get you.
It just. There's all sorts of. He mentioned Steve Sachs, who couldn't throw the ball to first base. Chuck Knobloch did the same thing from second base. He'd throw it into the stands. This guy can't. The guy pitching tonight for the Cubs cannot throw it to first base.
He just does not. He doesn't do it.
I guess
or he does, and it just
it goes into right field. Yeah, it's just it's the craziest things about sports.
It is.
7-Eleven traffic, weather, and then a story 45 years in the making that involves Pete Rose and McGraw-Millhaven. That's next.